Welcome to another exciting edition to Grove City Hockey Presents
Hockey in our neck of the woods, and you, sir, were a very talked about person towards the end.
I'm a fifth-year senior, kind of. Well, it's my sixth year of college. Incredible.
Hey guys, we want to say thank you to our sponsor, Takakjy, for bringing you this episode. Make sure you check them out on the link below and use the promo code for 25% off your order. Used by all 32 NHL teams and players, Takakjy is the premier protective player clothing designed by players for players. Their innovative cut-resistant clothing has prevented serious injury to numerous players, including over 30 NHL players. Takakjy gives you the peace of mind to go out and play without worrying about injury. Use our promo code Grove City Hockey, all lowercase and no space, for an additional 25% off your order today. Welcome to GCH Podcast. I'm your host, Ben W. Stock, and with me is a very special guest. I've got Grove City's own Vice President, Sean Takakjy. Now, Sean's a very special guest because he not only is the Vice President of Grove City Hockey, he's also a T5 member of the Grove City Thunderbirds. He also manages the T3, the T4, the T2 Grove City Thunderbirds as well. So this guy is just a jack of all trades for Grove City Hockey. How you doing today, Sean?
I'm doing good, Ben, and thank you for the nice, warm welcome. I know you didn't need to do that, but this initial interview, obviously you asked about T5, and I was like, you know what, I better do this. So I don't want to – all the other guys on T5 would have loved to do it, I'm sure. But I guess, we haven't talked in a while, and it just seemed something easy that we can connect and talk again, so –
Yeah, and we had a blast just catching up just a few minutes ago. But now we're going to shift our focus from fantasy sports to, and family life to, what I wanted to do with you was bring you on the pod to talk about T5. What's it been like jumping back into the rink after a couple years off or a couple of seasons off? Because you had some injuries that you've had to deal with.
I've had 7 concussions that span from playing football, baseball, hockey, wrestling, and I retired for a little bit, and that's why I went into working in sports so I could stay around the game. Something that obviously we brought you on to do, and we've loved having you doing it too, and I think it's been a great pairing since then. But it was one of those things where this T5 division comes about, and we have just enough people. We have about 7, 8, and I'm like, I do not want to see these guys not play. They deserve to play. I'm like, I'll play. We'll get it done. We need a defenseman anyways. For how much defense I actually play is a different story. But it was
the tapes say otherwise. No, I'm just kidding.
It's that last weekend against the Fuel. I told everybody multiple times those 2 games against the Fuel were my worst games in a very long time. And you'll look at the other games like against like the Motor City Knights or whoever, and it's like, I actually played really good. But it's a blast being back out there. The group of guys that we have is something special. All of them want to be here. They want to be a part of the program. They want to compete in MyHaw. They know that it's not just some regular adult league, right? You can make the joke that it's T5, but going out there, watching it versus being out there, it's a whole different story. And everybody's competitors in their own right. And, regardless of what our record says, those are some very good and talented teams, and they're fun to play against.
Yeah, and there's 5 or 6 teams. I know I printed the schedule or the team standings out. I just haven't had a chance to really look it over. Because when I'm at work, my boss doesn't like it when I'm on the computer printing out stuff unless I'm on break. So by the time I get done printing everything out that I need, I have to put it in my folder, put it in my bag, and then I'm out the door.
Yeah, they don't get too happy about that. But there is 6 teams, and everybody I think's maybe not as much familiar with us, but obviously the Detroit Revolution, the Detroit
Mm-hmm.
Fuel. You have the Chicago Damage, the Motor
Yep.
City Knights, and Lakeside Storm, and then we're the sixth team that kind of rounds that out.
Cool. And you guys are sitting at the top of the leaderboards, if I'm not mistaken, with 8 wins, 0 losses, 2 tournament wins in the only 2 events that you guys have done this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, your guys' goal differential is through the roof. It's like what, plus 30?
Yeah, and it's I think it doesn't tell the whole story. Especially that first game this last weekend in Grove City, it was against the Fuel. It was 2-2 through 2 periods.
Oh,
I think
nice.
we just wore them down by that third period. It was
Mhm.
their second game of the day. It was our second game of the day, and the floodgates opened, and we won 9-2. We scored 7 consecutive goals, but at the end of the day, like you have to remind yourself, it was 2-2 through 2 periods. So I think it's a maybe a misleading stat. It's something nice to talk about right now because we are winning. But if the turntables go the other way, I mean, it's something we're not going to look at. We're going to be like, hey, we need to get back on track here. We always joke around that the Grove City Thunderbird way is we might be leading and be first in the division. We're also first in penalty minutes. That's just how we do it.
Yeah, I've noticed that. And then one of your teammates, Damon, was ejected. And I've met Damon a couple of times when doing the broadcast on those weekends, and I would have never guessed that he would have gotten tossed.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I've seen it before with him. It takes a lot. In a game that's heated like that, in a championship game, and you don't feel some calls are going your way, and you're trying to just kind of grind it out. I'm like, hey, like they're not really calling much, and I love the referees to death. They do an excellent job and whatnot. But obviously, that weekend was Carl. I think it's been a while since he's really had to ref, and all it took was they were getting tangled up, and you could have called them both for interference or something like that, but nothing was called, and it goes to the ground. So he gives him a little shove, and then that was what was called. I'm like, anytime you retaliate, that's gonna be what's called. They're gonna see the last thing. It doesn't matter, and everybody was frustrated. I would be lying if I said I wasn't frustrated. Everybody at some point in that game said, "Oh, there wasn't a call that went our way," and you just have to. You can't argue with the refs. You can't deal with any of that. You have to play your game. But, just the fact that we weren't playing our game made it so much worse on top of that. And it's nothing against the Detroit Fuel. They are a good team. But we knew we could do it at any given time. We're just not playing the way that we should be. So
Yeah. Yeah, Nick Leon did a good job putting that team together, as you well know. And then, of course, Nick Smolinski and the Fuel in T2 are just dominating everybody as well.
they were surprised. That first T2 weekend, I was sitting there looking. It was the very first game too, and I was like, they don't look that impressive and whatnot. And then the next thing you know, that you keep on watching them every single game, and it's like, oh no, that was just their first game. That was a warm up, and they got going. And especially this past tournament in Indianapolis, like we have the pleasure of watching those games too as well.
Yeah.
There was not one point you said that they're not going to lose this game. They were in control the whole time. They had a little bit of help from Corey Hodge on the back end, but if you watch the game, they didn't need him. They didn't need him.
No, and that's the thing that I don't think too many people realize that about a Smolinski run team is that he gets guys that know their roles and play their roles to the best of their abilities, and it works. It not only works for him, but for everybody. I mean, you get out there and hey, I know I'm supposed to do XYZ, and if I just do XYZ all game, I'm not going to have any issues. I'm not going to have to worry about who's going to pick up my back end if I decide to stray from that XYZ and try a W. It's crazy.
And I think it speaks volumes to obviously the city of Detroit, state of Michigan, where hockey's at. Them and the Revolution, they all play in the same rink out in Fraser. They play each other all the time. They're both two of the most structured, well organized teams, organizations. They're not going to beat themselves, you got to figure out how you can get under their skin, which is very hard because they
Yeah.
will be composed. They're gonna shake it off a lot of times. So there's an aspect of luck that you kind of hope in some of those situations. Now, our T3 team had a couple of really good games against them. We won both of them in Buffalo last year, but I think my guys would say that that was probably one of the harder games throughout the whole year.
Yeah, that Fuel team, like you said, is a very tough team to play against, no matter whatever division you're in. So segueing from that, let's talk about how you got into the sport of hockey. I heard a little bit of information when we were at the Let's Play Hockey Expo in Minnesota. Um, so let's talk about your dad for a second.
Mm-hmm.
You got him this wallet from Second String Leather Company, a phenomenal leather company. If you guys ever get a chance to check out their products, they're phenomenal, amazing. You bought one for your dad, but tell us a little bit about the backstory behind that. And then my question is that what kind of brought you into hockey? Or were you more of like, I'm going to do all of the sports that I can, and hockey is just one that I just kind of fell in love with?
So there's a good combination of both. I didn't find this out until later, but my dad actually did try out back in the 70s for the Flyers. I think it was about 72. And, during that time, obviously the country was kind of going through recession. And this was all sports. And Philadelphia was hit one of the worst. There's a movie, I think it's with Mark Wahlberg, that kind of talks about that story when he plays for the Eagles.
My favorite movie of all time that I put on when I don't want to, like, when I just need to, like, I love the music. It's called Invincible, and it's about Vince Papale and the Eagles, and where Dick Vermeil finally comes into the league and is looking for that one player to kind of bring a spark to the Philadelphia Eagles, and he ends up holds an open tryout, and Vince Papale, lo and behold, comes out of nowhere, doesn't play college ball, is older than a lot of players that are in the league, and he just happens to get built around because of his character. And take it away.
Yeah, and that was the whole story. That's what was happening, especially in Philadelphia at that time, and happening across the country. Well, my dad went to the tryout. He got into training camp, and he actually shattered his ankle and had to have ankle surgery, which cut his career down. Like that was it. There was no point in that. He played high school hockey. He was like, hey, you know what? I'll give it a try. They let him keep his jersey. It's hanging in his closet at my old home, obviously. And when I've always just been around the game of hockey. I've played so many sports growing up, and I played one season like Pee Wee Ice, like when I was 5 years old, and my parents were like, "You can play this, or you can play football, baseball, all this." At the time, I chose all those. By the time I was 14 years old is when I got my fourth concussion. And at that time, of course, everything was kind of coming out with the NFL with concussions. And I prematurely retired from that, but I wanted to play in sports. And someone just mentioned, hey, like, why don't you play like roller hockey? Like, it's no contact. Like, you should be okay. And I go there, and I haven't skated in, again, years. I go to this tryout. I'm the only one that doesn't know how to skate at all. I'm like trying to like wiggle my hips, skating backwards and everything. And since playing that, like even at that time, I was like, no, this is fun. And I got so much better at doing it. But the people that I met at the time, one of them's Brian Bird, who his dad was our coach, technically. He was my coach, but he was playing goalie. He's 4 years older than me. And he was playing goalie for us when I was in ninth grade. He was a senior. He was allowed to do it because he was playing out of position. He was playing varsity one as a defenseman skater. They're like, okay, like you can play goalie for this lower league. You've never done it before. But he was my coach. So obviously at that time, like he's a very good human being, a very good coach. Like nothing's changed even really since that time. And that's what helped me kind of grow and fall in love with inline hockey. But I've always loved hockey in general. And it's just one of those things where when I was younger, my parents, they I remember one of my first Christmas gifts was when I was 3 years old. My parents got me a little Alexei Kovalev Penguins jersey. And they will tell you, like, whenever I was younger, like, I would pronounce hockey names better than actual English words. Like, I was always obsessed with hockey, trying to
That's
pronounce
awesome.
all these cool names. And it's like, oh, that's Peter Sikora. Like, but then I get into an English classroom and I can't form an actual sentence. But it's been a love of mine since then. I have so many great stories, and obviously, you know, making that kind of transition from not playing baseball, wrestling, football to hockey, then I was like, what do I do with the rest of my life? And I was like, I want to go to school to at least work in sports.
Mhm.
And ever since then, it's just been almost a whirlwind where I worked for the Youngstown Phantoms. I worked for the Madison Capitals. I had a front row seat to go see Jack Eichel, Cole Caulfield for free admission every single night. And all I had to do was kind of point a camera or just do play by play and talk about it. I'm like, this is just amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's one of those things where you don't really get a chance to, I guess, really appreciate it while you're in the moment. But when you are done with it, you get to sit back and you go, man, I really did that. And that's pretty cool because not many people get a chance to do that.
Yeah, and for those who don't know at home, I'm also the one that kind of watches a lot of your podcasts before they get uploaded just to make sure, hey, everything's kind of what it should be. But it's always so fun to listen to you and your stories, especially talking about your experience going over in Africa and Namibia and teaching other kids the same love that you had for the game. And I think that's what it's really about, right? Like, you want to give back. We all want to give back. And those are the memories, like, you don't think about it at the time, but that's like, I'm 28 years old, and I was like, that's pretty cool. I got to do that. Like, I got to play a game with Ryan Suter and Zach Parise,
Yeah.
and they were putting on a clinic for up in Wisconsin for a bunch of 14-year-olds. They're like, hey, yeah, like, you could go out and play. I'm like, okay, I'm using the mascot skates and everything like that, and I'm just getting blown away by 14-year-olds. But it was
Right.
fun.
Yeah. I mean, well, because why not? I mean, like,
Yeah.
you always look at it. So like when I interviewed for the coaching job, or when I put in for the coaching job, I'm like, what's the worst they can say is no. I'm in my final year of college. I had all I had left to do was the firefighter one and my EMT paramedic academies. So it's literally all I had to do is all my bookwork stuff was done. I just had to go do the physical, practical stuff, which is for me is easy because it's all heavy lifting at that point. Because
Mhm.
I did all the bookwork, and I just saw an opportunity. I'm like, well, what's the worst thing is that I can still do the firefighter, EMT, paramedic stuff, or I can give it a shot, and see what happens. And I, got the gig and really thought I did a pretty good job for the most part. In hindsight, looking back, I know I could have done a lot better. I don't think I was quite ready for that opportunity, but I was grateful for the opportunity to try. And because again, like I said, you sit back and you look back and you go, not many people get a chance to do that, And so I look at it from this perspective is when I look up in the stars late at night, when all of them are out, I can go, I'm one of the very few people in North America that can say they've seen all of the constellations. From the southern hemisphere to the northern hemisphere. Because not many people get a chance to see that type of, those stars, to look up without any bars or anything like that, without having to go to some form of digital technology to look at it and just go and breathe the air, And so it's pretty cool. It's a pretty special moment, It's like, that's pretty cool. Like my 30th birthday was in Africa. Like, now how many people get to say that your 30th birthday was in Africa?
Yeah, that's awesome. Like, and that's how I look at it too, Ben. Like, I've had so many great moments that, like, at this point, it's like I was the fortunate one. I was one of the very few fortunate people. And even in your instance, like, I haven't seen all the constellations. I've been around the US quite a bit. I've only been to
Mhm.
Canada. I haven't been anywhere across seas. Like, I've had a lot of great moments, and there's still a lot that can be accomplished. And I'd like to give back. And you've called a couple of the fun thing is having Taden when he comes out on the broadcast, and you've called games with them. That to me is what makes it real special because I had those instances when I was young,
Yeah.
and hopefully he can take over my job whenever I'm done.
Right. Well, and he truly appreciates it too because he loves the game. And so when you're around people that love the game, you bring out compassion, love, understanding, and you make people feel included, welcomed, and and just honored to be around. So which and it's kind of cool because there's Brennan. We were talking about him. This high school kid in the family. I only met him at the Christmas party just this past Sunday, and I'm like, he's like, oh, I'm doing this broadcasting class, and I'm like, huh, I wonder, and then of course Billy Zalba, a former Muskegon Fury up here, he's there at the party because his wife is my fiance's cousin, and he looks at me and goes, you got a podcast, don't you? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, why don't you see if you can't help him out a little bit? And I'm like, I actually was already thinking that, bud. So I went up, struck a conversation with him, and it looks like we're going to be able to make it out in February on that third and fourth weekend. I wanted him to see some T2 action because I know he would get a kick out of seeing some of those pro players play.
Yeah, that's some good talent. It's funny you say that because Mark, who does our photos, and I've kind of trained under him for doing photos, and kind of now this jack of all trades where I've done play-by-play photos and all this. He brought his cousin out. His cousin did a documentary for the NFL for Damar Hamlin. Oh, cool. And this guy is very good at film production, everything. He came out to that Grove City weekend, and Mark said he absolutely loved it. And it wasn't even T2. And that's like the cool thing about it. Like, it's still great.
Yeah, and I don't think a lot of people realize, like, once you get into, like, a roller hockey environment, how amazing it truly is. Because everybody is all about having a great time, no matter how you look at it. You can be... You can have your issues out there on the rink, but once you step out from the rink into the locker room floors, all of that anxiety, all of that hate, anger just goes away. And everybody's like, let's go have a beer and celebrate.
Yeah, that's exactly how it was. Playing, especially, I get the orders for the picture orders, and Kayla from the T5 Detroit Fuel Team, like, oh, hey, it was fun playing against you and everything. I don't think she knows who exactly I am, but she's like, oh, yeah, no, it was fun playing against you too. And it's just something as simple as that. Like, it's a very fun experience. You get to go out there and kind of go to war, and then afterwards you go out and you're like, hey, man, that was fun. Thank you for beating the crap out of me, letting me beat the crap out of you. We're good to go. Let's go relax somewhere, get some wings or something, and we're good.
Yeah. And then you're building up those friendships for future events as well, because then you can go, okay, hey, you got me last time, I'm going to get you this time.
Mm-hmm.
And then it just goes back and forth.
I mean, hopefully for the T5 guys, that's maybe not the aspect yet. Maybe next year when I'm off the team, but
right.
It's always a good time, like especially just meeting the relationships with Mike Farinelli, Nick Leon. I mean, obviously with Carl Richardson and Maiha. I mean, you have a bunch of outsiders from Pittsburgh that just can't, like. I mean, who are these guys? Like, why do they even care? And they brought us in and showed us everything, showed us nothing but compassion, and worked with us, and it's been a great, fun experience on every single level, whether it is playing or whether it's broadcasting or taking pictures. Like, I was sitting on the bench taking pictures, and again, this is like the T4 Buffalo Rastafarians. Mm-hmm. They've had some battles with our T4 guys, but they weren't playing each other. I'm like, hey, look at this picture here. And they're like, oh, that's so sick and whatnot. That's awesome. And it's like, that's what that's about.
Yep. It really is. It's about creating those memories, sharing those memories, and then coming together as a community to to be happy. Playing the sport that we all love, and it's amazing. I can't wait to get back to the rink to check it out, see how it goes. And we'll see how it turns out and unfolds. Here in the next couple of months.
Well, I mean,
So
we'll be
now
excited to have you back.
I know. I hope so. I mean, it's been crazy. I mean, my baby girl's 4 months old now, and she's starting to she's turning over around a lot more. So you put her on her back and then she'll roll over, and she's been super moving around a lot the last couple of days. And my fiance's like, well, we can't just leave her on the ottoman anymore because then she might, because it sits off the floor quite a bit. She's like, she's likely to roll off, and so you're just like, man, you just hate missing some of those memories, and seeing that stuff. But
Family's the most important thing, and you're doing the right thing. We've always been fine with missing people for reasons like that. I mean, we miss you. We're going to be glad to have you back for a weekend and whatnot. That I'd rather hear compared to the last story you told me about your son, with getting into it with some of the other kids. We don't have to talk about that, but I'm glad to hear that. I haven't heard anything from your 4-month-old yet, so I was like, okay,
Yeah.
everything must be okay.
Yeah, no. So Bennon's doing great. Luke, on the other hand, this kid, was a couple that last week. He decides to. So he had a rough couple of days, and like where he got sent home, because he was like throwing chairs, hitting kids, hitting teachers, and the crazy thing is, like, I had stopped like roughhousing with him, a year and a half ago. So I'm like, man, do I need to like start roughhousing with him to kind of get him to like know that, hey, you're not the strongest kid in the the block? And I'm like, no, that's probably not the way to do it. And so anyway, long story short, he goes through the motion. Okay, hey, what are we not going to do today? I'm not going to hit anybody. What are we not going to do today? We're not going to throw any chairs. What are we not going to do today? We're not going to throw any away toys. And then I said, okay, so then what are we going to do today? And he goes, we're going to be kind. What are we going to do today? We're going to be, a good listener and a good helper, and so on and so forth. So I get a text message from I get a notification on my Hi Mama app, and it said, your son has had an incident. He pantsed a friend and tackled him. And I went, well, I guess he didn't hit anybody.
Yeah,
I can't be too mad. It's funny now, but it's not funny. Like it's a serious matter, because it's like, wait, why are we doing this? But I mean, everybody goes through it.
You're doing the Lord's work. If that was me, I know the biggest sin is like if you laugh at it, like you're condoning it. And me, I'd be like, that's kind of funny. That's hilarious.
Well,
but you don't want them to see that.
Exactly. So like I chuckled at work. I didn't chuckle in front of him. But so then follow that up with, oh shoot, where's I going to go with that? No, he so then one of the other things too is that he runs out of the classroom because he doesn't want to participate in something. Well, I get a notification, hey, your son ran out of the classroom as another child and parent were coming in. And I go, okay. But he ran in to go to use the bathroom. And I'm like, is this really an incident, or is this more of a teachable moment? Like, hey, just let the teacher know that you're going to the bathroom, because they've, when I've dropped off Luke before, there are other kids that are going to the bathroom without any supervision.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what's the big deal here? And they're like, well, we don't want kids running around and doing this or doing that. And I'm like, but he didn't really do anything wrong. So like, I wasn't even mad at that. I was like, good job, dude. You went and used the potty. Good for you, kid.
Yeah, that's the one thing I never understood with even like the education, or like well, you shouldn't go then. Like if they know they need to go, like if I need to go when I was there, I was like, well, just let me go. Like Like, I can
Yeah.
find the hallway. I know where to go. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not gonna like frog around, but I do know that he did like the one time that he did kind of have some like unsupervised, which he's never done at home, but he did decide to play some paper mache with the toilet paper. So I was like, what do we got going on here, Garrett Kiddo? But outside of that, the kid's doing great. He's super smart. Um, Funny story about that. This morning, listening to the radio, and we're listening to this free beer and hot wings in the morning, and they're doing this 12 days of Christmas smash, where it's 12 songs smashed together, so you can't really decipher what's really being played, because it's not like, oh, you're playing this a little bit of this song first. It's all 12 songs right in a row, and so you're like, what am I hearing? Like that type of song. And he's sitting in the back, and he goes, "Hey, Dad, I hear 'All I Want for Christmas,'" and I'm like, "No, you don't." And sure enough, the first caller says, "All I Want for Christmas" by the Jackson 5. And then they start playing, they take it out of the song, and then they play it, and he's singing along to it. And I'm going, what? Like, I don't listen to Christmas music. This kid's heard the song, and he's singing the words to Jackson 5. And I'm
that's a good version of it, though.
Oh, yeah, it is a great version. And I'm just baffled and amazed by like how smart he really is, but how dumb he acts.
Yeah.
But he's a good kid.
And rather have it that way than the other way around.
Oh, I know, man. Like, I know. I'd hate to see what it would be like if it would be the other way around.
Yeah, so it's at least everything's going okay. He's just having fun, so
He's just being a kid.
yeah.
So back to hockey. So now you've had a chance to not only see, Jack Hughes, Owen Power, Jack Eichel, Cole Caulfield. Of all of the hockey memories that you've had a chance to be a part of, what sticks out the most to you?
Well, I mean, there's going to be a couple. So I would say the one that sticks out the most to me, which was personally more of a family thing, was my mom let me skip school one day. This is back when the Penguins just got Sidney Crosby. They drafted Malkin the year before, but he wasn't allowed to come over from Russia. So we had to wait. Well, he comes over here for training camp, first training camp, and I was like, "Hey, Mom, like, can we go down and see him and everything like that?" And she's like, "Yeah, sure. But if you do that, like, you better be getting A's for the rest of the year." I'm like, yeah, no problem. I'll study hard and everything like that. And we go to the open practice at the time, which was at the Mellon Arena. And actually, I have it here. He personally gave me a puck from the ice.
Oh, that's
and
awesome.
It was the coolest thing. And I still have it to this day, still beat up, center ice NHL puck.
Oh, that's so
Just
cool.
from a training camp that Malkin gave to me, and I was like, that's fun. Got another one here and this is from the Fall Classic here.
Oh, cool.
Which is in the USHL, and
yeah,
I took this out. I was scorekeeping in that box. They needed volunteer help, and of course, I was in college. I'm like, I need to get volunteer hours and all this stuff. This is awesome. It's right in my backyard, and that's kind of how I got started with the Youngstown Phantoms. I was just kind of there volunteering, and I, like, not even a day or two before, I submitted my application there, and they answered back, and it was Troy and Afka Loney. And Troy Loney, obviously, he played for the Penguins. He was the first captain in Anaheim Ducks history. I'm like, oh, this is freaking cool. And I'm there doing it, and they're like, oh, hey, Sean, whatever. I'm like, yeah, that's me. Like, hey, how you doing? Like, got to meet them, and I was sitting there and just in the penalty box, just keeping score and just throwing out pucks to the referees. And I got to see, Trevor Zegras up in close in person, literally at ice view, where no one else, even former NHL players, they're sitting behind me, and I'm sitting in the glass right there. And I go over like, hey, can you do one thing? Can you go over to our locker room and give them this in between games? And I go over there and I'm just standing there, and this is Owen Power at like 14 years old. I'm 22. Like,
Right.
go up, and he is just a giant. I'm like, oh, that kid's gonna be in the NHL eventually. And I didn't know anything at the time. I was just like, oh, Power number 8 or whatever for the Chicago Steel. I'm like, oh, this guy's gonna be in there. Ends up a couple years later. He didn't play that year with them, but a couple years later he played before he went off to Michigan, and he just dominated the league. And it was like, that might be the only time I've ever been correct in saying someone's going to make the
Yeah.
But I got to see there. I'm like going into the locker room with all these players and stuff, and that's just the other cool thing I think from that aspect. Obviously, being able to develop those relationships and everything. So like when I worked for the Youngstown Phantoms again, and I had to end and go. I went out to Wisconsin with the Madison Capitals, which Ryan Suter of at the time of the Minnesota Wild, he owns the team. His dad, Bob Suter, the whole arena is named after him. I got to meet Ryan Suter, Zach Parise, and at the time, which I thought this is kind of funny, I got to meet Mason Lowry. He was 15 years old. He was coming on a trip. He was from, and I forget, I think it was Verona, Wisconsin. It's right outside of Madison. The Green Bay Gamblers drafted him, and Madison Capitals didn't. But his little sister, I worked with her the whole time there, and she's like, "Oh yeah, that's my brother." And it's like, "Oh well, he's coming on a trip or anything." He just got drafted 2 years ago by the Boston Bruins in the second round.
Yeah.
I'm like, I knew that kid. That kid was a babyface assassin. Like,
Isn't it crazy? And I love that I'm now starting to see some fanboy come out of you, because when we were at the Let's Play Hockey Expo, I got a little fanboyish, and you were like, "Hey man, you need to tone it down." And I'm like, "Do you know who this is?" Like, and so it's pretty cool to see you geek out a little bit.
yeah, no, I think there's always a time and place for it, and at that time, like, and obviously you've done an excellent job with everybody you met there. I mean, the Team Talker episode, I don't think I will ever watch again, because just watching it for the first time, I'm like, oh man, it hits you right there.
Mm-hmm.
But we were on like a business mission, and I felt, I mean, there's a part of you as the vice president, kind of, you have to set the tone there, and
Yeah.
I have no problem with anyone geeking out too, but I was like, wait, we got to stick to it and whatnot for a second or so here. Let's make sure we get enough cards and business cards and contacts, because but that's what's the great thing about the community still too. Like, you can have that instance and still kind of geek out a little time at times during this in a podcast with you, because I think that's what everyone wants to see and listen to, right, as well. And at the same time too, it's, I mean, if they watch this podcast and they hear me talking about it, I'm more happy for you, because we're getting viewers that are, I mean, again, they're playing in the NHL, so it's cool. There's again been very thankful for a lot of memories and a lot of cool things, and obviously I think the best one has been, since that couple years with the Phantoms, Jake, as I'm coming back from Wisconsin, asked me, "Hey, I got this idea for a company." I'm like, "Yeah, count me in." But not even any hesitation.
Yeah, and then it's only grown from there, and I love what you guys have done. I love what I'm seeing. I do peek at the emails after they've been read, just because I'm like, oh, hey, this is kind of interesting. I don't do anything outside of just peeking, and then I just I keep it to myself. But yeah, so it's cool to see what you guys are building towards, and what you guys are hoping to achieve. And I'm happy to be a part of it, and I'm happy to help build content for you guys, and hopefully we can build for a really long time.
Yeah, and I mean, you've done an excellent job with everything so far. We're so glad to have you, and even in that aspect too, it's the same thing as well. Like when our T3 team won last year in the championship, it was the game right before. It was because they played the Tropics in the championship, but I forget who they played right beforehand. It was like the Hitmen. I think it was Mid-Michigan Saints, then Hitmen. I think it was the Hitmen game. And the Hitmen beat us twice already previously in the season. We're down by 1 goal, and like I'm sitting there watching it, and I should be broadcasting. I'm like hands behind my head and everything like that. If you ever want to see me geek out, it's whenever we're in a situation like that because I
Yeah.
was freaking out. And it's funny, right after the game, I run over to the locker room because I'm super excited for the boys. I'm like, super excited for them. And Landon Hanna, he's our assistant captain on T3, he's like, yeah, we saw you up in the stands kind of freaking out. You were freaking out worse than we were. We're like, we have this game. We're going to win this game. I'm like, didn't look like it to me. I was nervous.
Now, and that was because that was in the I think that was what, the B rink or something like that, or
Yeah.
rink 4 or whatever. That was a rink that we weren't broadcasting. I was calling the play-by-play in the other rink, and so like I didn't even know what was going on over there. But man, it's just one of those things where it's like it's so cool to hear.
Yeah, and it's the same way with with the T5 guys too. As much as I like being a part of the winning culture and winning championships, I think everybody wants to be that competitor. It's definitely more fun to see the rest of these guys win. And that's what means more to me than anything else. And through these first 2 tournaments, at least on the T5 side, everyone's been ecstatic. It's been fun. It's been a good locker room experience, and be interesting to see what happens when we do get that first loss. If we do, I don't want to jinx anything, but how we come about that adversity as well. So
Yeah, it's all about the bounce back on how you guys can bounce back from such a trying time with those trials and tribulations. And it's one of those things where, like one of my greatest things right now is watching my kids grow and learn. Luke is playing soccer right now, and watching him running up and down the soccer pitch. It's indoor, and he gets dirtier playing indoor soccer than he does playing outside. It blows my mind. But it's like just watching him. When it clicks for him, it clicks. And then the same thing when my daughter's doing something, different that she doesn't usually do before. So now, like, anytime I see her, she starts to get that smile, and then she gets real shy. And but she doesn't do that with anybody else right now. And I'm like, I love it. I love it. But yeah, so it's just like what you were saying, like, the personal accolades that you are able to accomplish, the awards and everything really mean nothing when you're able to put together those units and then watching that unit come together and win. So hopefully it keeps on coming for you guys.
yeah, and I'm sure Nick and Farinelli would say the same thing. It's definitely more fun to watch it than necessarily always be a part of it. And always just seeing the success of everybody else. It's definitely awesome, and it's cool, and we'll see how it goes left. And obviously, I tell them it's all about the process right now. I mean, these are nice accolades, but we want to hold up that big trophy at the end of the year. So
Yep.
That's what it's about.
Yep. Just take it one game at a time, and hopefully you guys come out on top. So with that, we're about out of time, but I want you to do a quick shout out. Who are the guys on the T5 team? Just give those guys a quick little shout out, and then we'll wrap this up.
Yeah, of course. I appreciate all the hard work, Ben, and of course for them, you got Fred Farroni, Colin Corbett, who's in net, and Brandon Britton. They hold down the back end, and 2 great goaltenders, but I think even better human beings. You have Ian Ney, you have Damon Pajak, you got Joe Wilson, you got Shane Wiesinger, and Brian Pruitt, Tyler Domenico, and of course Tyler Warner. Some of those experienced guys that have helped out on that back end, and it's been good. It's been a great team effort from everybody, and I don't think anyone would want to do it with anyone else. Unless it's another a Grove City guy, but this is a very special group. So I do thank them for everything that they've put in, all the hard work that they've put in throughout the year.
Yeah, those guys, I love Colin and I love Brandon Britton so much. And, especially when they can get a chance to jump on the pod and shoot an episode or 2 with me. Those guys they're just great guys. And like you said, they're all around great human beings, and of course, that's what you and Jake have really got yourself going there is that you got a good group, good core group of guys, and who do nothing but just appreciate each other, and and nothing but love.
And I mean, of course, you're part of it, Ben, too. I mean, glad to have you doing this, and I'm glad you had me on. I think I've probably mentioned it maybe 5 or 6 times for the last couple months, but so yeah, if you need a podcast guy, I can hop in there.
For sure, and we'll definitely get you back on soon. So with that, I'm Ben W. Stock. With me is Sean Takakjy. I actually got your name right this time.
Yes, you did.
And we will catch you guys on the flip side.